Okay, so basically I'm going to come and talk to you today about our journey through DevOps. So Ticketmaster's been around a while. I'm going to tell you a little bit about the history of how we got to where we are, what reinforced some of the silos we have, and what we're doing to kind of change it. And I really love some of Matt's kind of key points that he was trying to make, and it's certainly some patterns that I've seen over the time that I've been there. But basically, I'm just going to give you a little bit of a ride and a story about our journey and what we've been doing. So firstly, a little bit about myself. I've been at Ticketmaster for in excess of about 18 years. So I've been there for a long time. Man and boy, I kind of grew up there. I started in the call center selling tickets, got some great opportunities. I had some very helpful people share their skill with me, and kind of, and I'm hoping that I can repeat that same thing and give other people opportunities. But there's three key things I really want you to take away from today. Is history is useful, context is everything, and don't be afraid. Most organizations, particularly when they're going through an evolution, people disregard how they got there in the first place. And that can be a big mistake because you really forget what it was that got you there, what made you successful. And actually, context is useful because when you look back at your history, it means you can actually, maybe you can go back and do something you did in the past before. It's okay to do that again because the context has changed. Maybe the tools make that possible now, maybe the culture of the company or the business imperatives drive you to maybe change how you do something. And then the last thing is don't be afraid. And that's really a double thing here. It's about not being afraid to adopt a change, be part of the change, because actually if you can influence and be part of that, then it means you can have a say in what happens. It also means don't make people afraid. Learning new things can be very scary, and one of the things we talked about when I was at the WinOps conference, and again, this is not just about Windows, we have a massive estate, I'm going to talk about a Linux estate. For infrastructure people that maybe are more old school, using Git for the first time can be terrifying, and it's not. It's just once you get used to using it, it's fine, it's like breathing. And that can go in both directions. Lots of sysadmins assume things that actually software engineers just don't even think about, and they think that it's like, well, you should just know that. Well, that's not the case, and it goes back to Matt's point. It's about having expertise and respecting people's expertise. So anyway, I'd like you to think about these three things as we go through, because I think they're really important. So, who is Ticketmaster? Well, most of you know Ticketmaster. We, as our website, you probably go online, try and book tickets for something, maybe they've sold out, because we have lots of high demand events, but you probably know us through our websites. But actually Ticketmaster is a service provider to venues, clients and artists to sell their tickets. So we provide the back-end software for how you can get access to events. And the retail platform that we have, our website, which you all know and hopefully you love it, maybe you don't, but hopefully you know and love, is really just one facet of what we do as a business. We have our call centers, we have our customer service support, we've got all of that stuff behind the scenes. So there's actually a pretty big ecosystem that drives what we do. So just to give you some stats, because it'd be wrong of me not to, just to give you some idea of our scale. So we are the world's leading #1 technology. We invest heavily in our technology year on year. 80 million unique visitors a month, that's globally, that's pretty significant. 100 plus offices globally. And that's including our technology offices as well as our field offices that are supporting the venues and the promoters that are putting on their concerts, all the sports venues that are kind of touring their around the different football stadiums or kind of rugby or whatever it is. We're in entertainment, we're in providing the ability for people to get access to this stuff. So you can see, it's a big scale, right? Ticketmaster's a big organization. We're part of Live Nation Entertainment. And that was all part of a merger that happened in 2010. So Ticketmaster was a separate entity. We've gone through some changes over the years, certainly since I've been there. But now we're part of Live Nation Entertainment. Live Nation Entertainment is primarily a kind of a music promotions business. We do lots of festivals, we do lots of concerts, we put acts on all over the place. But the key thing here is it's a big global organization. And there is a separation between Ticketmaster and Live Nation. So we're able to leverage what Live Nation brings to the table for Ticketmaster to take that to our other clients, because Live Nation isn't into sports. We also work with people that are potentially competitors for Live Nation. So it's very important for us that we have a clear delineation between the company and the business units. And by having the kind of coverage that Live Nation has, it means that we can bring that experience that we have about ticketing to all of our different clients. Which means we can try and help artists sell more tickets, more people find out about gigs and concerts that they don't know about, more people know about theatre events that they don't know about that are going on. And that's really all we care about. We really care about the fan experience. And I can tell you for a fact that we're pretty passionate about this stuff, and everyone wants this stuff to be super smooth. So what you really need to know about our technology is you talk to us, you go to a new company, you go and talk to people and you say, oh, well, you know, our business is unique, it's not like yours. You've got this experience before, it's very different what we have. It's not true, everybody knows it's not true. You go everywhere, there are some domain areas that are different. This is the thing that is unique for us, and it's basically what we call our on-sales. So, that doesn't look so good on the screen, sorry about that. So 9 o'clock, there's our seat map. A big concert's going to go on sale. This is Chris Rock. I don't know when it went on sale, but there's not many tickets left. These events go on sale at a specific time, and it seems like an easy thing, right? Everyone goes, oh, well, you know, kind of Amazon's got all this scale, you're just gonna, you know, you just sell it all, it's easy. But the key thing to remember is like there's only a couple of really good seats here, right? So Chris Rock sizing up the venue, looking for the best seat. What's the best angle? I want the best seats. It's not just Chris Rock that wants the best seat in his own gig. It's kind of hundreds of thousands of other people. And previously, when Ticketmaster first started, there was no internet. You know, we started in a time when it was really, well, let me show you. So Ticketmaster started in 1975. So to put that into context, Bill Gates and Paul Allen developed their basic program for the Altair. Microsoft became a registered trademark, Betamax is introduced, and Motorola obtains a patent for the mobile phone. So this is cutting edge stuff. Like Ticketmaster introduced computing to live entertainment and running venue management. So we started in 1975. There are three guys, kind of Albert Leffler, who's still at the company, and Peter Gadshaw and a guy called Gordon Gunn. And pretty early on, they started kind of branching out. So the way it worked, they sold the software, and it was like a franchise. People would spin up and computerize their venues. So our first international client was actually Oslo Nye Theatre in Norway. So back in 1978. I mean, okay, who here was doing computing in 1978? Okay. Yeah, right. Okay. Who was born prior to this? Okay. Good. Okay. So, I mean, this is really cutting-edge stuff at the time, right? Complex stuff to do, but without any of the frameworks or kind of glue that we take for granted right now, right? Global connectivity or any of that stuff. So 1981, Ticketmaster UK opens above. Is that when you were born? Yeah. Oh, right. Okay. There we go. 1981 was when the Ticketmaster UK opened above the Albury Theatre, and then 1988 we started doing some operations in Australia. And here's the thing that I really want to point out. If you think about that unique problem where you've got all this stuff that happens all at once in ways that are really unpredictable. It's a real challenge to have engineering teams really own that stuff, build it, own it, and run it when they're 8 hours away. So I want you to remember that now while we go through this, and also Australia, 5 to 9 hours away, depending on where you're talking about. And this is one of the things that we really needed to be able to build very capable operational teams in those local regions to be able to solve those issues now. Because when an event goes on or someone can't get into a venue, that's something that needs to be fixed now. You can't wait 8 hours. If there's a problem, it needs to be solved immediately. So it started very early on in Ticketmaster's kind of history that we needed to build teams to help operate things. Then we started adding some of our different engineering teams, and we started having very complex kind of mesh of teams in different places, knowing different products. Particularly if you look at some of the acquisitions and expansions, these are key milestones in Ticketmaster's history over the years. And some of these things meant that actually there was, you know, it makes it very difficult. So it goes back to, we've got these very challenging time zones. We need to operate in a very now business model and deliver things for the fans and clients to make sure that it's as smooth an experience as possible. And so what started to happen is we start to see some kind of reinforcement of those kind of operational silos, because you have a team that's building something, you can't really have them release something out of hours because the people on the ground supporting the local business really needed to know what was happening. So anyway, back to 1998. The internet sort of started. Ticketmaster was very early. So I think we sold our first ticket in 97. Yeah, I think in the US, I think we sold our first ticket in 97, and in 98, we kind of launched in the UK. In 1999, we thought 8% of our inventory was going to go online. Turned out it was 20%. So we started looking at this, and at the time we were running NT4. Anyone remember NT4? All right, okay, this is cool. So it was SQL Server 7, I think, and well, it might have been 6 at the time, actually. NT4, SQL Server 6. We had a fairly simple application stack. Altian load balancers at the front, and then our back-end systems, which we call the host, which sounds a bit ominous and dirty, but actually is something we're very fond of. The host is a very key thing for how we've been able to operate, was distributed in all these different regions because, again, this was a time when bandwidth was very expensive and when connectivity was very expensive. So we made sure that everything was like close to where the venues were, because the venues mattered. The internet was new, so that latency for the internet, we didn't care about that as much. We cared about the venues having good connectivity and the outlets where we also sold tickets, which were in those regions. So all this stuff was like quite old. But what we saw when we saw this was like, man, we got to do something about it. We've really got to kind of reinvigorate our stack. So we had our first kind of big rebuild. And what happened during this time was we had a lot of different engineering teams in the LA office coming from another tech team in the past. We were part of Ticketmaster, City Search, IAC, so we had different ownership at the time. And what they did, they worked very closely with the developers on a new architecture. And again, one of the things that Ticketmaster did do before was DevOps, a high degree of collaboration of people working together on what's the ultimate goal, to build a scalable, horizontally scalable system that we could deploy to that was maintainable and that gave us flexibility. So this was back in 2000. It was everyone takes CDN stuff for granted now. They take like kind of application load balancers for granted, but this was all cutting edge at the time. Akamai were a very early adopter. I think 1999 was like their kind of big thing, right? With Star Wars, I think for the trailer was their big pitch really there. Netscaler, we were early adopters for Netscaler, early adopters for NetApp, and we also had Oracle databases sat in the middle. So what we did was we built a pretty nice, clean stack. We built our own config management system because nothing else was really up to scratch at the time. So it was like CF Engine, we didn't really like it, so we built something that we later open sourced. It was very hierarchical in nature and did lots of actually it was pretty cool. But anyway, long in the tooth and well past its sell by date. We used MySQL for doing metadata caching at the edge so that we could make this stuff scale, but everything was thought about how do we make it horizontally scalable. We used a lot of NFS so that we didn't have to worry about pushing data out. Again, network infrastructure was very expensive. So 100 meg switches, you kind of have to think about, that was the best that we had. So pushing lots of content out to those all the time, you didn't really want to be doing that. And as we started to evolve this tech stack, we started to look at our back-end systems and say, okay, well, we need to evolve this. This was running on VAX hardware in different regional venues. And it was also getting hard to source kind of physical infrastructure to replace some of the stuff that was aging now. So what we did was actually we took a project on to kind of bring that in-house, host everything in data centers rather than local offices. So good, clean stuff you take for granted now, unless you're moving to AWS, so we've all moved on a step. But we started to bring that in-house, we started to re-engineer it, and we started to build, from using an emulator and small things, we started to build bridges between the Linux space and also between the emulator so that we could do much more advanced stuff with it. So this was our first big rebuild. There was a high degree of collaboration. I can't stress this enough. There was a high degree of collaboration between the engineering, systems teams, networking teams. Everybody was involved in doing this. But we still had that same problem. 8-hour windows, we needed to build up ops teams. Like all of the engineering was still mostly being done out of the West Coast. We had some teams in Europe that were doing some engineering. And then to top it off, we had this. Okay, who has to deal with these things? Oh, man, wow, not so many. Okay, so a lot of the practices that were defined by some of the things that came out of SOX and PCI, a lot of companies were already doing them, we were doing them, but what it really did was formalize and reinforce some of the silos we were already creating, and we didn't really have another way of dealing with it. So the roles and responsibilities, we took that very literally. There wasn't really the tooling or the testing or the framework around being able to test things. So we were, this kind of really started to set in stone some of our behaviors. So when we acquired a new company, we'd see this nimble operating company and we'd say, great, okay, now you need to follow our model because we have all of these constraints. So we would take them and then kind of move them around a bit. So what we did was we built this, and it was cool, and we were really happy with it. And I think everyone's seen very similar slides, right? But we were really happy. You know, we had a dev team, we had a QA team, we had the capacity team, all different teams running on different infrastructure. We had a staging environment and a production environment, and I was part of the ops team that was looking after the production and staging environments, and we still had this 5 to 8 hour time delay, so in different markets, and that was a problem. So I don't need to tell you that was less than optimal, and we kind of recognised this a long time ago, and we've been making changes over the years about how we can really change. Adopting AWS has been a big driver because it means that we can provide tooling to engineering teams, but it's not the only part, because also you need to make sure that you're doing that in a consistent way, particularly if you're in a large enterprise company. You need to make sure it's consistent. So, where have we been? How did we start changing our team? So I'm part of the technical operations teams, and actually quite often the technical operations teams have been viewed as blockers because we're the ones that look after the data center, look after the network, look after the systems, and kind of concerned about the security and the databases. So all of those things are the areas that have often been quite contentious and frustrating for engineering teams to deploy. So this was the model that we had. We had engineering teams handing stuff over to an operations and application support team to do deployments and to troubleshoot. We had a database team stuck in the middle, trying to both do engineering work and also try and do the operations work. And we had systems engineering teams who were actually having to do a lot of operations work because with all of our on-premise stuff and that new technology we brought in, we actually brought a lot of complexity, and we needed a lot of very deep specialisms. So when you're dealing with storage at that kind of scale, and you start building like an internal cloud and lots of other kind of heavy infrastructure components, you start to need to have a lot of specialisms. And the syseng teams were basically also trying to hand off some work to the operations team. So that was the kind of model we had. Then we started really thinking, well, actually, this doesn't make sense. We need to kind of shift left a bit and empower some of the engineering teams to own this stuff a bit more so that they can understand how to scale stuff out, and actually they can deploy more frequently. It's very important that we do that. It's a business imperative, and like I see it, my team sees it, everyone sees it. I think you guys all do, because that's why you're here. So the first thing we did was to try and bring the syseng and database teams together so that we kind of focus on engineering at that level and providing the capabilities to the engineering teams. The ops guys were enabling the engineering teams to be able to deploy their code. How are we doing for time? Oh man, 2 minutes. Okay, we better go quick. We were just trying to shift everything over again. So what happened is we noticed there was a bit of an anti-pattern about this. So we were basically taking work away from an operations team that had a lot of really good knowledge about how this stuff should run, particularly if we're going to migrate it into another environment or AWS. But we were increasing the collaboration, and that was a good thing. So what we've got now is, and this is purely because of scaling, we don't have enough people to embed and have everyone in every single team. We have a lot of complexity. So what we're doing now is we basically created cross-functional teams of at least the different operational disciplines aligned with groups of product delivery teams and engineering teams. So we can at least create more opportunity for collaboration now. It's not perfect, and this is probably more of a 2 to 3 year transition for us as a company and an organization. But the key thing is also to define a proper platform so we can introduce some consistency. And I think we talk about DevOps, and actually I think a lot of what's happening now is people are trying to define a platform that brings consistency and safety to all of the people that are deploying and managing their infrastructure and services. There's a big challenge here, which is like, how do you get the balance right? I'll tell you a little bit about that now, because this is really about evolution, not revolution. If you go in and do a revolution, people lose their heads. If you do an evolution, you hopefully keep the knowledge around. So bear with me. I'll go through it quickly because I know I'm keeping you from being pizzas. But if we take, who loves cats? Who loves cats? All right, 50-50, 50-50. Okay, I love cats. If you don't like cats, you'll have to put up with these next slides. I'm sorry about that. So bear with me. So cats, I love cats. Some of you love cats. We all love products, so we'll just use cats to help us with this. So basically, this is the old model, right? We'd build a custom house for our cat, we'd make it fit, we'd take a long time, we'd size it up, we'd say, okay, how many cats do you think you'll need? How long will the cat live in it for? Will we, will it be 3 years, 4 years? Are we going to get more cats? Will the cat get fat? I don't know. So we take a long time, we size things very specifically, and this is our old model, right? This is where we size the hardware, we go through our requirements. Nobody enjoys this process, and I can tell you the systems guys hated it as well. So this is also one of the problems, right? You sized it, you thought you sized it, but your cat doesn't fit in the box anymore. This looks great for finance. This is awesome, right? This is efficient. The cat fills every hole in the box, but it is not good for the cat. The cat is not happy. Same thing, if our application is squeezed into a box it doesn't fit into anymore, it's not very good. So there's another model for that. What we'll do is we'll do lots of small stuff and we'll put them all together. Wow, okay. So what happens when you put lots of small cats in a box together and you introduce random things like food or kind of toys? Well, stuff is unpredictable and you can't really be certain how these things are going to interact. I'm not saying that you should run kill -9, by the way. It's completely unacceptable. So I just want to make sure that's up there before someone takes a picture of it. So this is it's a pretty simple model to understand, and we've tried to use this a couple of times. So what did Ticketmaster do about that? So first thing that we did was actually we started building our own internal cloud. We have most of our infrastructure running all of the time. And back in 2000, when we started doing that, Amazon was very early, EC2 was really the only thing they had, and we didn't trust it, and in fact, a lot of other people didn't really trust wanting to do that. So we built our own internal cloud, and the intention was actually maybe we could resell this ourselves, or maybe we could shift this between the different regions when we have those spikes. So it's pretty cool. It does what we wanted it to do, but actually it's not our primary business. It doesn't make sense. And I think lots of other companies are realizing you have to be careful about what choice you're making with that. So the right thing to do for us is to use somebody else's box. It gives us transparency of costs, which is really important. We didn't have that with our internal cloud. Everyone kind of spins up a VM. We've got over 20,000 VMs, and they're not small VMs. We've got over 20,000 VMs running in our internal cloud globally. So it's a pretty significant footprint. And nobody's paying for it except for the technology team, because it's not as visible as it needs to be. AWS or Google or any of those tools really help bring that transparency. And as product owners, that's really important because you understand the value of what you're bringing to the business as well and what the true costs are. So this is where we go next. It's not going to fix everything though. This cat does not fit in this box. And that's true for a number of our applications. It's not a good fit for everything. It definitely solves a lot of problems. And as we re-engineer and we start changing products based on business need, it'll be good for us. But right now, it doesn't suit every problem. It will suit some. And as we get there, we'll be able to create, if you're fans of Kubernetes, which I think a lot of you are, we can create our little pods and stuff that needs to play nicely together can play nicely together. So we can make that work for us very well. So I'm going to cover this very quickly because the slides will be available afterwards anyway. One of the tools we've used to help us assess whether the technology should move or not is we've got this thing called a tech maturity. We've open sourced it. It's available on GitHub, and there's some templates in a Google Doc to give you a framework to assess your technology. This is an open tool inside the company, and the idea is that teams assess it against various capabilities. So testing, whether you're doing capacity testing, whether you've got a bus factor, like there's only one engineer that knows how this works, we've got to move on. So basically, it's a really cool tool. Have a look at it. Tap me up if you want to ask me more questions about it, but it's a really cool tool, and we used it to help assess what technology needs to move, and also what teams need to do to improve and modernize their tech stacks. So these are the principles that we've used. So they're very much based on some of the Amazon stuff. We've tuned them a little bit for our internally. So we're saying Docker or automate your operating systems with Chef. You don't have to, you can't do everything, but these are really good simple templates for teams. And then these are the tech stacks that we're kind of doing now. So this is a chance for us to clean up and modernize. Lots of new stuff in here, lots of old stuff in here too. We have to be practical, right? You've got to think, what's the business value? Just don't do it for the technical sake of it. You've got to bring business value. So basically, that's kind of me done. History's useful. Context is everything. Don't be afraid. If you've got any questions, I guess you can ask me afterwards because you might be hungry. I'm going to just say we are hiring in case anyone wants to know. I've got to get the word out there. So come and join the band. That's our Imperial where we have some of our meetups. It's not as big as this, but it's kind of a cool space. But that's it, really.